Hi, everybody. Let's get started on it. Can't be helped because things are happening, right? Things are happening and just amazing, amazing. Let's see if we're on. Okay, we're on and I can get started. Just amazing. So I can see the comments now in the Facebook, and this is day 1,998 days since our son, Richard Halliday, the Distinguished Honor Graduate, #1 at basic training, and #1 at AIT, Guide on Bearer, combat lifesaver, wanted to be CID, He loved solving crimes. Um, he was forcibly removed from his barracks room for being a whistleblower on major crimes. Major crimes. I'm talking about pipelines, cartel pipelines of criminal trafficking, and involvement of the military's connection to the Walmart mass shooting, which was used to attack President Trump. That's what it was. Um, and so, Richard was his whistleblower, and he was forcibly removed from his barracks room when? In July of 2020. Why July? Well, because, he was reporting in 2019, right? Especially with the whole Qatar, his deployment in Qatar. Okay, we know a lot about that. And what happened in July of 2020? It's really helpful to put together a timeline, right? A huge timeline when you are investigating. And of course, the CID told us that we had to investigate our son's case. So the investigators told us we had to investigate our son's case and bring them leads, do their work for them, bring them leads. And I know that Candace Owens feels like she's so frustrated because she's been being the investigator, bringing the leads, and then not getting a response from the FBI on Charlie Kirk's death. We can absolutely relate to that. We can totally relate to that. The CID told us that we had to bring them leads or they could not do anything to help us. So that was, in 2020. So when you're putting together the investigation, when you're investigating and you have all of this information coming in all the time, which we have, and people that have been watching this page, these live streams, absolutely can corroborate what we're saying, witness the absolute breaking news just about daily on this podcast. And of course, we're being shadow banned. And of course, it is our son's case. And so, even though the security breaches, the amount of crimes involved in this absolutely touch the world. Really, it touches the world. But the world doesn't really know because of being shadow banned and not covered, and the lack of understanding why Richard's case is the Walmart mass shooting case and vice versa, what that all means. So we absolutely understand, how this could, people have their lives, right? They have their lives. And so we have just been patient because we know that the truth is coming out. and people will absolutely see how it connects to their daily struggles with the criminal um, problems that they might have in their life, being victims, and how it's touched their life and how it connects to Richard, because it's uh, you know, it's not separated from that. That's how big Richard's case is. It's so big. It's connected to the Charlie Kirk's case. It's connected to the attempts on President Trump's life. And it's connected to so many victims that have suffered under this kind of organized crime. So, uh, why was it July 2020? And in that timeline, something happened on July 14th. That's really big. Of course, July 9th was a dismissal. Um, right before that, then it was um, Mayo's lawyer doing counterintelligence with Richard. But what happened on July 14th? Well, July 14th was a runoff race for the prosecutor's office in El Paso. And it upset everything. It upset everything. Montoya was supposed to win, but he didn't. He didn't win. It was Yvonne Rosales. And so the cartel, the El Paso cartel, had lost that race. They lost that race. And that's a big office. That was the DA's office. So they lost the DA's office. There was too much risk there because now prosecutions could start happening. And they had to, in our opinion, looking at the investigation timeline, they had to kill the witnesses. And that's why July 2020, after July 14th, Richard's life was taken in the barracks room. Well, in the barracks, down in the basement, in the arms room, and forcibly removed from his barracks, taken downstairs, a soundproof room. His life was taken, and his body was stolen and then trafficked over to Juarez. Why did that happen? Why did they traffic Richard's body to Juarez over international border, uh, over an international border? Why did they do that? Um, well, remember at the very end of June, something extraordinary happened. Animals found Vanessa Guillen's body, and line workers, noticing all the animals, called it in, and they dug that area and they found Vanessa Guillen's remains. This was reported in the news at the beginning of July of 2020 and was horrific, just horrific. Richard was designated the first CONUS DES 1 missing soldier under the Vanessa Guillen absent soldier flowchart. In November of 2020, because finding Vanessa Guillen's body, which was never intended to be found, it was the most sophisticated burial that Texas EquiSearch founder ever heard of and seen. That's what he said. It was just so sophisticated. What do I mean by that? Well, they dug a foxhole. They had burnt the pieces of Vanessa Guillen. I'm very sorry to her family. They put her in that foxhole, and they put lye over her and then concrete over her and then dirt and leaves. That's how sophisticated this was. And this was by the Leon River. And no one was ever to find her. But God had a different plan. And this family has really suffered. And we understand it. And so the need to silence the witness, and then to make sure that Richard's remains would never be found, was the reason why they took it to Juarez. Now, there's greed there, and greed makes mistakes. And greed is to collect on the remains because, of course, it's all been uncovered. The funeral fraud, the transnational funeral fraud that's going on in Juarez, El Paso. And they don't pass up a chance, right? They don't want to pass up a chance to collect on remains. So, and Richard was worth a lot of money because he was a U.S. Army soldier. And this is why we believe that the remains were somewhat preserved and dumped at like at a crematorium like Plenitude Crematorium that was recently raided, and over 400 bodies were discovered in one go. In one go. How many bodies went through that place? I don't know. It's flesh peddling. And this is all connected to our huge story yesterday night that I put out. I put out 3. We call it the gun story, the Barunda story, and the rhino story. And I asked, while we were sitting around having a cup of coffee this afternoon, discussing it, and I said, well, which story do you think had the most views? The gun story, the Barunda story, or the rhino story? You know, dirty Dee Margo, who I want to talk about. And they all kind of knew because, of course, 5 years of doing this. It's the gun story because people can relate to Patrick Crucius, the anomalies and the gun anomalies. And I don't think that the public knows that, and I have his name here, Marcelo Ebrard. He was the investigator or official from Mexico that requested, really demanded, to see the weapon. He wanted to check out the weapon. He was denied, y'all. He was denied to be able to see the weapon that was used in the Walmart mass shooting. Something is very fishy with that weapon, and people understand it. People absolutely understand it. And it needs to be fully investigated. And so that is the number one of the 3. But in importance, well, they're all so important, right? But this story about Oswaldo, and I hope I'm saying his name right, Barunda Rodriguez is so big. And of course, Trump calling Dee Margo, sorry, I'm going to yawn because it's 1 o'clock, um, calling Dee Margo a rhino is huge too, really huge, because he's dirty. He is so dirty. And let me put it all together for you because all three of those stories are very, very connected. You have a very dirty mayor of El Paso who started, uh, because of his marriage, his this insurance, right? mm, that just gives me the creeps to say that he's involved. He got to start with the insurance company of his father-in-law. I believe it was his father-in-law. Uh, Not his father-in-law. Um, he was he was picked to be the president, no experience at all, but he was picked to be the president. Um, Ever since then, and his wife is very interesting. DeMarco's wife was friends with Laura Bush. Okay, the Laura Bush. I'm talking about W's wife, right? I'm talking about the president of the United States' wife. And DeMarco's wife, friends with Laura Bush, was picked to run George W. Bush's campaign without any experience. Without any experience. So that's, and ever since then, there's been one corruption after the other. Okay, one corruption accusation, case, whatever. They have been fighting accusations of corruption for many years. Even in the poison ponds. And I mean, like the FBI. I mean, to get the FBI to be on your trail, you have to be pretty corrupt. Just to say that because, or I guess you got to have the connections for them to leave you alone. I don't know, um, but just one case after the next, and I just posted it up, and I think it's really important to know that the level of it was with Bush, and Leilani Hart posed with W, didn't she? She posed with W. She had this connection. Leilani Hart needs to be arrested, y'all. She needs to be arrested really bad, really bad. I mean, there's no excuse. Either one way or the other, she committed major crimes and she needs to be arrested ASAP. So just putting that in there. Just putting that in there. But DeMargo, um, he has one bad conflict of interest after the other, one bad associate after the other. I mean, it gets really, really bad. And of course, as mayor, what did he do with Sylvia Brunda Firth? What did he do with Bill Hicks? Right? With Sylvia Brunda Firth. I mean, she committed such huge crimes as a city attorney for El Paso, and he gave her a golden parachute of $250,000, right? So, why? Brunda is family with Oswaldo Brunda. Okay. So Sylvia Brunda Firth is family to Oswaldo Brunda Rodriguez. And yesterday we put out that we now have confirmation of an El Paso cartel. of course, dirty Dee Margo shows it, right? He shows it that there is an El Paso cartel. And now we have confirmation because it was Oswaldo Barunda Rodriguez that put together this alliance with the Juarez cartel as a joint venture with the El Paso cartel so that they can work together, give access, give protection, legal protection, law enforcement. They could manipulate cases, everything. They and how do we know? What is a lot of the corroborate? Well, we have a lot of corroborating, but we want to let the people know in language that they can understand, um, meaning why is it that all these dirty officials that are part of the cartel in Juarez, why do they live in El Paso? Why do they have uh, homes, half a dozen homes, more than a dozen homes, and businesses, and no fear of extradition because they're living in El Paso, right? They're living in El Paso. Um, that is really good evidence that everyone can understand that there is an alliance because you need to have visas, right? You need to be able to get your driver's license. You need to be able to get loans. You need to be able to, um, get police protection, intelligence protection, to in order to live and have met multiple businesses and lots of homes in El Paso, and they do, they absolutely live in El Paso and in Texas, surrounding area, right? Or you can say New Mexico, part of Texas. That's where they live, and they have then major ties. It's not an excuse that the owner of Plenitude Crematorium has a house right there next to Beto O'Rourke. It's not a it's not a coincidence that La Diabla, um, Martha Mendez Aguilar's family was working for Beto O'Rourke, right? It's not a coincidence that attorney Justin Underwood's wife was working alongside La Diabla's family for Beto O'Rourke. And of course, Danae Katzen for Beto O'Rourke, who tampered with our son's case, interfered with our son's case, and was in possession of Richard's financial information and credit cards after his death. So this is, and this tie with Beto O'Rourke. So it ties El Paso cartel with the Juarez cartel. And that's huge news. And we put that all out in articles and so that people can understand what this means because this is like the invasion, and then they bring in very criminal elements that want to tax us everything, and you see that by the voting results that El Paso voted blue when they're a very highly military veteran area. Um, but now we know that the military is involved in this, right? The military is involved. So in the Walmart mass shooting is involved in, Candace Owens says the military is involved in the Charlie Kirk death. And of course, we know the military is involved in Richard's Code Red. Code Red. So that is huge breaking news because that means there's a El Paso cartel infiltration into the military. Of course it is. Into the highest ranks. Of course it is. And in El Paso, of course it is. People in El Paso have been writing me they're not surprised. They see it every day. They understand that the infiltration has come into El Paso. And we are documenting it, though. We're documenting it and filing it. All about the judges, all about the DAs, all about the AGs, all about the AUSAs, all about everything that's going on in El Paso. We're documenting because um, patience, the when the weight of all of the evidence gets too heavy, it will come down. It will come down. So thank you, Anicia, for coming on so late with your prayers and your love. And I just want to say that this Sylvia Brundeforth, a family member to Oswaldo Brunda Rodriguez, is a very big deal in solving this. And of course, we put up the El Veren um, that, and I hope you read it. I just put it up right before I came on. I posted it, and I hope you spend some time reading it because it really is jaw dropping and it lays this all out and puts things together. And, we are very, very glad to do this because we want our son's remains. We want accountability, and it's the people demanding accountability that gets accountability. So we're very, very appreciative of all your shares, all your demands right now for doing the right thing. We see it, and we're feeling it, and people are absolutely um, it's crumbling. It's crumbling, and who's going to be standing, right? Who's going to be standing? Those that can stand on their faith, they're going to be standing tall and wanting accountability. So, and yeah, absolutely. We want accountability and we want our son's remains. That's what's going on right now. And we just appreciate all of your love and your sharing. And we will be back tomorrow, God willing.